Let's discuss all these developments now with Shireen Salti, who's a political analyst joining us from Ramallah in the occupied West Bank. Thank you so much for your time, Shireen. Let's start with the situation in Gaza. As we've seen and heard from our correspondents there, the ceasefire hasn't really translated into meaningful relief for Palestinians. What does that tell us about the real nature of this ceasefire and where it's headed?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one thing it's clear, Israel is testing what the red line is for Americans during their visit to Israel, to the country. It's important to note that Israel has been notorious at breaking ceasefire over and over again. It's interesting to see the developments on the ground in comparison to what the discussions have been at the legislative level. We've seen the Israelis test the Americans with the annexation bill, to see their reaction. And yeah, it's really clear that that's the Americans' red line at the moment.
Yeah, well, let's give our viewers context about what you just mentioned there, that the U.S. and the annexation bill in Israel. We've seen the U.S. dispatching a parade of high-level officials to Israel recently, Marco Rubio being the latest one, to ensure that this Gaza ceasefire holds and to preserve peace, they say. But when we see these high-level visits alongside the ongoing settler violence in the occupied West Bank and also the Israeli parliament voting to impose Israeli sovereignty on the occupied West Bank, what does it say about American influence on current Israeli politics? Is it overstated, this influence, do you think?
I don't think it's overstated, but I don't think we should underestimate the pressure, the U.S. pressure on Israeli officials, particularly when it comes to this. I mean, we're seeing the U.S. officials pushing back on the so-called political stunt, as JD Vance, Vice President of the United States, calls it. That is the annexation bill. But, you know, the Americans are continue to ignore the new illegal outposts and settlements, which is what is happening, the informal kind of annexation on the ground that has increased since October 7 of 2023. I mean, just to give you a perspective, the United Nations office documented that 1,001 Palestinians were killed in the West Bank since then, and 1 in 5 are children. And that included, by the way, Palestinian American citizens. You know, every day Palestinians face settler attacks, especially now during the olive harvest season. And at the same time, you know, Palestinians see Americans visit Israelis without visiting Palestinians, talking about peace, like a one-sided kind of peace without really a regard to their lives. So, you know, will the Americans push back change anything? It's certainly welcomed. It's certainly important. But I mean, it is quite astonishing seeing kind of Jared Kushner and JD Vance, you know, humanizing Palestinians now in the media just after the continued funding and support for Israel's military occupation in the West Bank.
Right. Donald Trump's credibility, many people would say, is tied to this ceasefire because, after all, it's known as a Trump plan, right? What would it mean, Shireen, if Israel defies Washington on the ceasefire and on annexation?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the Israelis will not be able to defy the Americans publicly on the annexation or legally per se. I think Netanyahu has noticed now with the Americans pushing back that this is not the political time to do this formally. So I think, you know, that test has failed. Why? Because I think Israel knows that they cannot survive without the American support. It's very clear now, especially with the Americans coming in and out of Israel. You know, first Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, then we see the Vice President JD Vance, and now JD Vance leaving and Marco Rubio coming in, really trying to hone in and showcase to the Israelis what their red lines are. And I think the Israelis know all fully well that if they do ruffle the feathers of the Americans, they may not continue getting the support that they need to survive.
Okay, thank you so much for speaking to us, Shireen. Thank you very much for your time. Shireen Salti, a political analyst, joining us there from Ramallah.
Don't miss out. Get the full picture. Subscribe to Al Jazeera for reliable news and expert insights. Like, share, stay ahead.